Awesome. All right, great. First of all, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I work as a speech language pathologist, and communication is really important to me. Supporting individuals with disabilities and successfully communicating, building meaningful relationships, and accessing their community is all really important to me. And it sounds like it's all really important to you too. And so I really, really value you taking time out of your busy schedules to volunteer with this population and also learn how you can continue to grow your skills. It really means a lot. So thanks for being here. I'm going to be talking about communication strategies that can help you on all your awesome adventures. So just before we start, I'll be using identity first language in this presentation. So I'll be referring to people as autistic people. Some individuals prefer person first language, so saying they're people with autism. Identity first language is the default in the autistic community. When in doubt, you can ask the individual or family what language they prefer. If this is the first time you're kind of hearing that distinction, that's always a good way to go. So today I'm going to be talking about autism and communication, just sort of a broad overview. I'll then kind of get into specific areas that might apply to certain individuals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Gestalt language processing, augmentative and alternative communication, how you can support non-speaking individuals with participation, how you can support individuals who may struggle with comprehension, and then we'll save plenty of time at the end for questions. So let's start with just talking broadly about autism and communication. So let's keep in mind that every autistic individual communicates differently. And I'm sure this is something you know by working with this population, that if you've met an autistic person, you've just met one autistic person. Everyone is different and everyone communicates differently. And that's because everyone's brain works differently. So the autism spectrum isn't a linear line, kind of from less autistic to more autistic, or more neurotypical to less neurotypical. It's kind of this broad spectrum of different experiences. So autistic people experience the world differently than non-autistic people. And here are some of the ways in which that occurs. So autistic people may have interoceptive differences. So it may be that an individual is less attuned or more attuned to senses in their body, such as hunger, thirst, feeling full, needing to go to the bathroom, feeling tired. So an individual may communicate differently because they may not be aware of when they're hungry, or they may be hyper aware of when they're feeling tired, and that may play into their communication. They may experience differences in the level of emotional intensity. So you may see meltdowns or shutdowns or situational mutism because of the way the individual is kind of perceiving their emotions and perceiving things in their environment. Communication differences. We're going to talk a little bit today about echolalia and scripting, but you also may see autistic people may have differences in kind of the eye contact they use, the way they communicate. So whether they prefer like back and forth conversation or kind of info dumping and talking a lot about something they're passionate about. Autistic people experience relationship differences. So they may be 100% authentically themselves all the time, or they may feel pressure to kind of mask and practice more like expected social skills just based on their background. They may choose to bond over sort of their special interests, and that's kind of a way they share and relate. Executive function differences that may include autistic people may be more likely to hyper focus on kind of one thing at a time versus being able to bounce around between different topics or ideas. Autistic people often have really intense special interests, and I like to refer to them as enthusiasm. So a lot of kids on my caseload and teens and adults have passions for, like Roblox or Minecraft, or maybe it's something as simple as vacuum cleaners, or maybe their interest is nature and being outdoors, but those interests tend to be really, really deep for these people. People who are autistic often stim in different ways. These can be kind of stims that the ways in which they move their body to regulate. It could be visual stims, so kind of like hyper focusing on a certain item. And then exteroception is basically all the senses that occur outside of our body. So what we see, smell, hear, touch, taste. So individuals may have hyper or hyposensitivity, so they may be more or less sensitive to sight or sound or smell. And this is probably one of the ways in which I'm sure you're all doing a really wonderful job of kind of already accommodating for like, oh, let's find a quieter space, or let's sort of like slow down and regroup before we enter into this activity, is a strength that I feel like a lot of volunteers have. And proprioception is just kind of the sense of where someone's body is in space. So you might meet someone who loves rock climbing because it gives them great input to their joints. You might meet someone who hates rock climbing because they really don't like the way their joints feel when they're climbing up and down the wall. So I wanted to kind of go through this slide first to give context for when you see communication differences. It's not just about language, it's about someone's entire experience of the world. Autistic people often communicate with the following characteristics, which are kind of considered part of autistic culture. So autistic people often are more comfortable talking and listening without making eye contact. They're still processing just the same, but it's just more comfortable. They often enjoy to share or info dump about enthusiasm. So instead of saying, you know, small talk like, how are you? Good, how are you? They might come in and say, I need to tell you everything about the movie I just watched last night, Dune. It was amazing, and kind of jump in, and that might be a way that they're kind of relating, and then enjoying engaging in parallel in play and leisure. So autistic people may be having a fantastic time kind of doing an activity adjacent to the group or sort of listening in the conversation, but not necessarily jumping in. And I really like this quote by Kaylin Randall, who's an autistic speech language pathologist, and she says autistic communication is a cultural difference that should be understood and respected. So in addition to these kind of differences in autistic communication, a lot of autistic people do experience communication disorders, and that's kind of where we want to look into accommodating. So many autistic individuals experience auditory processing challenges. So that means it may be difficult to process language in a loud or busy environment, and it may be difficult to process longer or more complex language. Auditory processing basically means there's not a problem with the way someone hears, and there's not a problem with the way someone understands, but maybe you say, okay, it's time to climb up the rock wall, and they like didn't process all of those words. So they heard rock wall and they said, okay, let's go to the rock wall, let's climb up the rock wall. I didn't fully process everything this person said. So what may help with that is having a more quiet environment when giving directions, simplifying language while speaking at a natural rate and repeating directions as needed, and using visual supports. Some individuals may have a receptive language disorder. So that means it's not a problem with the hearing, it's not a problem with processing what they heard, but it's a problem with understanding what they heard. So complex language may be difficult to understand. It may be difficult to understand negatives like no and don't. A lot of kids kind of willfully don't hear the don't in the language when it's something that they don't want, that they really want to do. Like, okay, like don't eat that ice cream. I want to eat that ice cream. But for someone with a receptive language disorder, they truly might not be understanding that no and don't in the sentence. So it can be helpful to simplify language, speak at a natural rate, and repeat directions as needed. Using visual supports, we'll go into a little bit more in depth later, but visual supports are always a wonderful way to support all kinds of learners. So whether someone is more of an auditory learner or a visual learner, just kind of giving every tool in your toolbox to help them understand, and avoiding negatives. So instead of saying no climbing until everyone's ready, you can try let's wait here. So kind of avoiding that negative just already takes away some of that complexity out of that direction. Some individuals may experience expressive language disorders, and that basically means so far we've been talking about what someone is processing or understanding, and now we're talking about how someone is communicating the language that they're using. So it may be difficult to express needs and feelings without supports. It may be difficult to use specific language to communicate. So this may sound like, I want this one, I want that one. And it may be hard for them to retrieve the specific words they're looking for, or maybe they just don't know the specific word they're looking for yet. And these individuals may use AAC, augmentative and alternative communication, gestures or body language to kind of supplement spoken communication. So strategies for these individuals is to look for nonverbal communication. So smiles, reaching, looking, moving away are all indicators of what someone wants to do. Maybe someone is non-speaking and they don't know how to say no, but you hold up the kayak paddle to them and they turn away and they start to move away. And that's a pretty good sign that they mean, no, I'm not ready yet. I might need a little bit more support, or I might need you to show me how to do this. Help encourage use of an augmentative and alternative communication system. So if someone comes with a communication device and you're not sure what they want to do, you can make sure that device is available to them. So you can show them that you're really interested in what they have to say. You can use visual supports. That's going to be a theme of tonight. And you can pause and allow time for an individual to formulate their thoughts. I feel like pausing was something that is a challenge for me, and I think it's a challenge for a lot of people in terms of, if someone's not communicating, what more can I say? I can ask more questions and I can talk more, and eventually I'll get them to communicate. But sometimes what someone needs is just a little bit more time to process their thoughts and feelings and share with you. My rule of thumb is I'll ask a question and count to 10 in my head. And if they haven't responded, maybe I'll rephrase the question. But a lot of times by the time I get to 10, they're kind of ready to say what they wanted to say. Some individuals may have speech sound disorders. So that basically means it's difficult to speak clearly and be understood. So, I mean, a common example of that is when kids come to speech therapy because they can't say their R's, or maybe their S's are kind of slushy. Some people may have more significant speech sound disorders where it's really, really difficult to understand what they're saying. Their language is fine. So they know what they want to say in their head, but it just comes out in a way that's hard for other people to understand. So strategies include, if it's an individual who has such a significant speech sound disorder that they use an AAC system, we want to encourage them to use that. If they don't use AAC, you can offer choices using visuals to better understand what they're communicating. And as always, you can look for nonverbal communication. So if they're smiling, reaching, looking, moving away, these are all indicators that they're trying to tell you something. Some individuals may also experience situational mutism. Situational mutism is kind of under the umbrella of anxiety. So it's not a willful choice to not communicate. It's rather an experience of losing access to one's ability to speak when feeling anxious or overwhelmed. So if someone experiences situational mutism, you can avoid questions, use I wonder statements. So instead of saying, do you want to go? You can say, I wonder if you're ready to get started, and kind of look for those nonverbal indicators of yes or no, I need some more time. You can encourage use of an augmentative and alternative communication system if the individual has one. You can offer choices using visual supports, and you can give the individual the option to write, select photos, or point to communicate. Often these individuals are have these experiences where they get frozen and they can't access their voice in these situations where they actually really, really want to engage. And they'll go home and tell their caregivers like, oh, I was having so much fun. And sometimes as a volunteer in these situations, you might think like, oh, I don't think they want to do it. They just seem so anxious, but kind of making sure you're continuing to give them the opportunities to share what they want to do. You might find that, they're really interested. They just need that extra support. Great. Okay. Now we're going to get into some more specific scenarios. So we're going to talk a little bit about Gestalt language processing. So the majority of autistic individuals are Gestalt language processors. If you're not familiar with this term, it basically means it's an individual who communicates using echolalia. You might hear someone script their favorite TV shows, movies, or clips. You might hear them repeat the question as a way of answering the question. So maybe you say like, oh, are you ready to go outside? And they say, go outside. And they kind of say it with the same intonation that you did. They might reverse their personal pronouns. So they might say, you're ready to go, when they mean, I'm ready to go. The dog thought I was telling him that we were going. That's very funny. And they might use language that may seem out of context. My favorite example of this that I think kind of puts this into perspective is I was doing an evaluation with a kid several years ago. And I brought out this big test booklet that did not look like any fun. And he looked at the book and he looked at me and he goes, it's too spicy. And I said, what in the world could that possibly mean? And his mom said, oh, years ago, he tried Indian food for the first time and it was really spicy and he was sweating and it was bad. He was pushing the food away and mom said, it's too spicy. And so he processed that language as, no, I don't want it. And then he used that language, it's too spicy, whenever he wanted to communicate, no, I don't like it. So that's a good example of out of context language that has a deep meaning for the kid, but may not necessarily make sense to us if we don't have the context. So what can we do if we're working with someone who does use echolalia and may not be able to be understood literally? The first step is knowing that these gestalts or these scripts, this echolalia we're hearing, are typically not literal. So you want to focus on the communication intention, so the meaning that the child is trying to convey or the adult is trying to convey, rather than the literal words. So an example is a kid might say to infinity and beyond when getting in a kayak. We can infer that maybe they mean, let's do this, I'm ready to go. So you can kind of look at the context of the situation and the action that the individual is doing to make a guess about what they probably mean. Limiting questions is another really helpful strategy. So Gestalt language processors may have difficulty understanding kind of the structure of a question. So instead of saying, do you want to have a turn on the rock wall? A Gestalt language processor would likely answer rock wall. Instead, you could try, let's climb on the rock wall, or let's take a break. What you're doing is you're providing those kind of chunks of language. You're providing the scripts that the individual can then repeat back to you. This strategy may seem a little silly, but it's really effective. I've found that it really, really works for individuals where I say, instead of saying, okay, like, do you want to go now? I just say, let's stay or let's go. And the individual can then say, let's go. And they're able to kind of share that. So you're still giving the individual choices, but you're providing them in a way that's easier to process and respond to. So just to summarize, instead of structuring it in question format, you're kind of structuring it as a sentence, but still giving that choice. Acknowledging what you hear. So even if you're not sure what a gestalt, so the echolalia that an individual is using means, you can still have a conversation. So maybe a child says, Daddy Pig loves jumping in muddy puddles. If anyone here has kids, that's from Peppa Pig. Then a staff or volunteer might say, Daddy Pig loves muddy puddles. This is so fun. Or maybe a teenager says, we're lean, we're green, and we're mean, which is from Ninja Turtles. And so the staff can say, I hear you. I'm really excited to go on this adventure with you. So maybe in that situation, the staff had no idea what the individual was talking about, but they could kind of infer from their body language and the fact that they seemed like they were having fun, like, yeah, they're communicating something about this experience that we're having together. And if you're really, really not sure, you can just say, I hear you. Thanks for telling me. Your job isn't to be, a speech therapist or figure all of this out. Your job is to kind of be engaged and together and build this relationship. Great. Okay. Next, we're going to chat a little bit about augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. So some things to keep in mind. Some people don't use their voice at all. Some people inconsistently use their voice, and some people use a combination of their voice and AAC to communicate. Speech, so the kind of physical act of making words with our mouth, is separate from comprehension and cognition. Non-speaking does not necessarily mean non-understanding. And in fact, people who are non-speaking understand way more than they can communicate. So you always want to assume the ability to understand, to learn, and to participate. Augmentative and alternative communication is a form of communication. So augmentative means that someone may use a device to supplement their spoken communication, and alternative means someone may use a device as an alternative to replace their spoken communication. People may supplement their communication with AAC if they have decreased or inconsistent intelligibility, which basically means they are just difficult to understand. their speech is hard for other people to understand, so they use this tool to help. They may have inconsistent access to spoken communication. So maybe when they're in a stressful or overwhelming situation, they have more word finding challenges, or it's really hard for them to formulate their thoughts, or maybe they experience situational mutism. AAC can be helpful for a lot of people in periods of dysregulation. I always give this example of I can't speak when I'm really, really hungry. And a lot of people experience that. You get hangry and you're like, don't talk to me until I've had a sandwich. And that's something that autistic people experience a lot, not just for hunger, but for kind of all of these sensory processing differences that they experience throughout the day. And so maybe you might see fluctuating ability to communicate successfully, and AAC can help with that. And then some people may experience fluctuating vocal ability due to a medical condition. People may need to replace their spoken communication with AAC if they have an inability to functionally use their spoken communication. So maybe they're fully non-speaking, or maybe they can speak, but their speech is so difficult to understand that they just completely rely on AAC to communicate. People may also have a gradual loss of spoken communication due to progressive disabilities like ALS, for example. Augmentative communication comes in many forms and all are equally valid. So we all use AAC all day, every day, because AAC basically just means anything we do that isn't speaking. So gestures, facial expressions, signs, vocalizations, anything we do that isn't speaking is kind of considered AAC. What you've probably seen more so with the people you work with is aided AAC. So high-tech communication systems, or if someone's kind of using like an iPad that has symbols on it with speech-generated output, but there's also other forms. So mid-tech is kind of like things like a Go Talk that you can see in the middle picture there, where there's sort of a limited set of words with voice output. And in the bottom picture, this is an example of kind of like a single switch message button. People may also use non-electric or light tech augmentative communication, which may be like a laminated sheet of paper with choices. Yeah. So for people who communicate with augmentative and alternative communication, our goal is to make AAC available at all times. So it's helpful to check battery life of a high-tech AAC system and have chargers available. And then if it's not safe or practical to use a high-tech AAC system, which at Waypoint, it seems like a lot of the time it probably wouldn't be because of all the cool adventures you go on, it's great to offer light tech options that are accessible during the activity. So you might have a laminated board in a kayak. You might have a lanyard with the word help on it on a rock wall. You might have a lightweight communication book on a hike. This isn't stuff necessarily that you would be expected to make, but maybe it might be helpful to communicate with families ahead of time to see like, oh, what do you use when you go to the park or you go to the pool? Like, do you already have a system in place? If so, it would be great to bring it. Yeah. And I think those are just a couple of examples. So like this girl in the pool is using kind of this laminated book to be able to communicate. Here's an example of kind of a lanyard that someone could have with them. And that has quite a bit of vocabulary on it. So not only could they say help, but they could say, I don't want that, or I don't like that, or let's go. Great. Now we're going to talk a little bit about communicating with non-speaking individuals. So things to keep in mind. Some people don't use their voice at all. Some people inconsistently use their voice, and some people use a combination of their voice and AAC. Again, speech is separate from comprehension and cognition. Non-speaking does not mean non-understanding, and we always want to assume the ability to understand, to learn, and participate. I think a common misconception is if you hear that someone's non-speaking, that means they don't speak at all, but that's not necessarily the case. Someone may have kind of inconsistent access to their spoken communication. They may be someone who like speaks some of the time just in periods of like extreme dysregulation or extreme excitement, but most of the time it's more difficult for them to access. So yeah, it's different for every person. So some strategies for non-speaking individuals. We want to use visual support or the individual's augmentative and alternative communication system to support communication. So here are a couple of examples. We have this visual that says yes or no, more climbing or done climbing. Here's a visual that says, let's put on our harness, try climbing, climb halfway, climb to the top. And here's an example of someone who was able to like laminate and tape their augmentative and alternative communication system to I like can't remember what is that called. Oh, a kickboard, to a kickboard in a pool so that they can use it while they're swimming. Yeah, so kind of being able to make visual forms of communication available at all times whenever possible. Some other strategies include look for nonverbal communication. So maybe a smile means this is fun. A reach may mean let's do that again, or moving away may mean I need a break. Vocalizing, stimming, and moving around can all be messages about how an individual is feeling. We can't presume to know what everyone's nonverbal communication means, because for someone, stimming may mean I'm so happy, and someone else's stimming may mean this is overwhelming. A smile may mean I love this, or a smile may be like, oh, I'm uncomfortable and I don't know what to do. And so oftentimes communicating with families and just building those relationships over time, when it's a situation in which you get to meet the person multiple times, can be really helpful. You can share what you notice too. So I see you reaching. I wonder if you want to do that again. Let's do it. And then that gives the person the ability to kind of move back or show you that that's not what they meant. So, you want to look for clues, but also seek kind of consent. A reach doesn't always necessarily mean like, let's definitely do it. Okay, so avoiding open-ended questions is also really helpful. So if a participant can indicate yes or no, whether it's with pointing to a picture, nodding, or shaking their head, you're going to want to stick to yes/no questions. Because if you ask a non-speaking person, what should we do today? They're limited to what is in the room, like what they can point to. If they have an augmentative and alternative communication system, that's great. But if not, they really can only answer yes or no. If a participant doesn't consistently indicate yes or no, you can stick to offering choices. So like, I wonder what's next, climb the rock wall or take a break. I hope a takeaway that you've had so far too is that the language that I'm using is pretty natural. So I'm trying to keep it simple for ease of processing and comprehending. But I'm also trying to keep it, like you're talking to a person, so yeah, just something to keep in mind. So some other strategies include not feeling pressured to fill in the silence. So speak naturally and allow for natural pauses to happen. I think I used to work at a camp, actually, kind of like similar to Waypoint when I lived in New Jersey for several years. And I remember as a counselor, I would feel really uncomfortable, like spending the whole day with someone who is non-speaking, because I was like, well, how can I read them? Like, how do I know if they're having fun? Like, it kind of makes the day feel like it goes by a little bit slower if we're not engaging in this back and forth conversation. And I think it's a practice to get comfortable with silence. And so, building in those time for pauses, but also kind of having an ongoing conversation. So maybe throughout the day, like, I can't wait to kayak today. You pause, you spend some time together. I wonder what we'll see on our adventure. You pause, spend more time together. Maybe, wow, look at that. Or on the rock wall, look, you made it so high. This is awesome. And so you're kind of keeping the conversation going. You're noticing their nonverbal indicators of they're having fun, or maybe they want more silence, or maybe they want to engage more. And you're kind of chatting about things you notice around you. Some additional ideas for people who are non-speaking. You can demonstrate available choices if you're not sure what an individual wants to do, whether through a visual or kind of pointing around the room. Speaking naturally, simplifying language doesn't mean baby talk. So kind of using proper grammar and word form and your typical tone of voice, but maybe just kind of simplifying. We'll talk a little bit about like what simplifying language might look like. Practice being okay with silence. Sometimes people just need extra time to process and to communicate. Also, sometimes people just like silence. I learned this in terms of I volunteer with this woman who she is speaking, but she's a bit quiet, and I kind of assumed myself as a really talkative person, like, oh, when she's being quiet, that must mean she's not having fun or she doesn't want me to be here. And several months into our relationship of me volunteering with her, she was like, I really like when we just sit. It's nice to just sit next to someone. And if she hadn't said that, I might have kept thinking that for a really long time. But I think that's true of some of the kids and teens and adults you volunteer with, where they may just be really enjoying your presence. So being okay with silence. Focus on statements over questions. So, if someone's not speaking, instead of like, what did you do today? Are you having fun? Like, I wonder how your day went today. Like, this is really fun. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun too. Show curiosity for the individual using I wonder statements, like, wow, like, look at that. Do you see that in the water? I wonder if you've ever seen something like that before. So you're kind of inviting conversation without making the individual feel pressured to respond in some way. Great. And finally, we're going to chat a little bit about supporting comprehension. So again, comprehension basically means what we understand. So some things to keep in mind. Some people need extra time to process language. Some people benefit from more clear, direct language. Some people benefit from visual supports. Some people can understand much more than what they say. And some people have a hard time understanding in a noisy or busy environment. Again, always assume the ability to understand, learn, and participate. So some strategies for supporting comprehension include using visual supports when giving directions or explaining an activity. So maybe someone has a difficult time processing multi-step directions. So instead of as soon as they walk through the door, you say, hey, here's what we're going to do today. You might just initially say, hey, it's nice to see you. I'm excited to tell you about what we're going to do. And then you kind of wait until you have the visual in front of you, or maybe you're standing in front of the rock wall and you're able to say like, okay, here's the harness. We're going to put the harness on first. Then we're going to do this. And so you're kind of scaffolding what you're saying with either a visual support or the actual tangible item. So the person kind of has the support to help process what you're saying. Preview the plan in a quieter space if possible. I know it's not always possible, but when you can, someone who may have processing or comprehension challenges often benefits from like a bit of a quieter space to process. So maybe before you kind of enter into the space where you're surrounded by a ton of other kids and volunteers, you sit down together, show them pictures and say, okay, here's what we're going to do before we get started. We're going to put on our life jacket. We're going to get in the kayak. We're going to use the paddle to move around the lake, and then we're going to return to the shore. I wonder what you think about all that. And then kind of inviting if they need more clarification or if they have questions or concerns. Yeah, here's some other visuals. So here's like a get ready checklist for a hike. Here's a I'm ready to climb checklist. And that can also help individuals with more, like the fact that these are checklists, people with organizational, like executive function challenges. This can also help with the self-monitoring. If it's someone who's a little bit more independent, they can kind of fill this checklist out themselves. So this is a little bit of an example of how to simplify language but still speak naturally. So something that would be probably how I talk most of the time, but way too complicated, is so what we need to do is first get those shoes that are over there under the bench, because those will help you get a good grip when climbing up the rock wall. I'm someone who loves to talk, and that's probably how I would talk if I was talking to my friend. If we simplified it too much, it might sound just like shoes on, and then we kind of sound like a robot. So just right is, let's get the shoes first. Way too complicated might sound like, next we'll have to make sure the harness is on, but we'll have to make sure it's oriented correctly so we can safely secure you to the rope. Way too simple robot speech might sound like get harness. And just right might sound like, next, we'll put on the harness. So the key here is that you're kind of taking away all the extra detail that you don't necessarily need, but you're still speaking naturally. And for me, this is what my natural communication sounds like. Yours might sound different. So stick to how you would usually talk and just kind of take away all the extra details that might make it difficult for a person to process. Some other strategies for supporting comprehension include pausing after giving a direction or asking a question. Some people may need extra time to process what you've said before responding. This has happened to me a few times where I catch myself where I'll ask a question and then I'll repeat the question. Halfway through repeating the question, the person is answering me, but I was talking so I didn't hear them, and then it just goes back and forth for a while. So sometimes that helps to do that little like count to 10 in your head to see if they just needed a little bit of extra time to process. Also, the person may have processed what you said, but now need extra time to formulate what they want to say. So some of these people may have challenges with both processing and comprehension, and then expressing what they want to say. So that pause can be really, really helpful to make sure that person has the supports that they need. Thank you for all you do. I know that kind of went a little bit quick. I hope I didn't go through anything too fast, but the good news is we now have lots of time to chat and answer specific questions you have. But again, I'm so appreciative that you're here. Thank you for all you do. And now we have some time for questions.
Incredible. Thank you, Megan. Folks, feel free to put questions in the chat or come off mute. Seeing a lot of clapping hands.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi, I guess I will ask one thing. When do you have strategies for when somebody is nonverbal and their parent or caregiver also doesn't have a good read on what they mean?
Yeah, good question. I feel like that happens a lot. So I guess maybe this is a scenario where you're trying to gauge if an individual wants to do this or that, and they're non-speaking, but their caregiver is also like, I'm not sure. I have no idea what that means. Is that kind of the situation that's coming up?
Yeah, like rock climbing specifically, we have some participants that, like, I'm fine if they want to hang on the rope. Where I get uncomfortable is if they've been up there a while and I have no idea and they're not going up anymore and they're not saying they want to break and there's just no clear, like, are you enjoying this? Are you not? Would you rather be anywhere else but here?
Yeah, that's a
And
good question.
yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes we just don't know. What I might do in that situation, and I'm like a very amateur rock climber, so I'm trying to like let me know if this absolutely doesn't make sense. But what I wonder is like if you then take that opportunity to like use those I wonder statements, like, I wonder if you're having fun, or I wonder if you'd like to take a break. Let's climb down to the bottom and we can make a choice. We can go up again, or we can take a break, kind of thing. And sort of inviting that. And then if they're kind of chilling, they're still staying up there. I guess it's two things. Maybe either they're having really fun and they're chilling just right in the spot where they are, or they're frozen and they're anxious and they don't know whether or not they want to come up or down. So maybe you might pause again and kind of see what they do. And if they're not showing any indication that they're going to go up or down, I would think maybe in that situation you say like, okay, like, I think maybe it's a good time to take a break. And then you kind of help them down and say like, wow, that was a new experience. And then maybe you have a visual and you say, I wonder if we should do that again, or maybe we'll take a break. And then you kind of wait for their signs that like, yeah, they're trying to go up again, or they're paused and they're waiting. A lot of times, a lot of autistic people can become very prompt dependent just based on their history of the types of therapies they've received. So a lot of autistic people receive like applied behavior analysis, which basically is kind of like you're given this prompt and then you do the behavior, the exercise. So sometimes people might in leisure activities not know that they do have the choice. So that might be something that comes up too, where they're waiting for you to tell them what to do. Yeah, but I would say kind of pausing, offering the choices, looking for the nonverbal indicators that the individual is indicating yes or no. And then you can kind of make the executive decision like, yeah, let's take a break. And then we can kind of go up again. Does that seem like something that would work in that situation for you to give a try?
Oh, I mean, it's a thing that I've employed for sure.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think the challenge comes in when the parent really wants their child to be doing the thing, and
Mhm.
we've done it, and we've hit a point where, yeah, I think that maybe a break is warranted.
Mm,
And the person has been able to communicate before when they want a break sometimes, but
okay.
sometimes there's just overstimulation to the point where that's not feasible. And then it becomes like a balancing act of
Yeah.
parent wants this kid on the wall, and it seems clear that they don't,
Oh, I see.
but they can't always communicate it in a way
Yeah.
that, so it's,
Yeah,
but it's
that's
helpful to hear that that's the strategy you would use, and sometimes it's just tricky.
yeah, I think sometimes it's just tricky. Like, I mean, I like my job is communication and sometimes I don't understand what a kid wants and that's okay. And yeah, it seems like in this situation where maybe you're balancing, maybe you do have a better read on the kid and but you're balancing parent expectations. And I would say in that situation, like it's a leisure activity. He doesn't have to climb the rock wall kind of thing. And so I think you have a good insight of like, yeah, like, and you can share that with the family, like kind of like, I think it's important in this activity that we also incorporate breaks. Let's go get a water and then we can return to it or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for all you do.
Bonnie's a rock star. Any other questions? Karen, go ahead.
Hi,
Hi,
I work
Karen.
for Thompson Island Outward Bound. We had a wonderful training by Waypoint last year, so I was really happy to find this online. So there's a bunch of us here from Thompson Island. Hello. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I learned so much in the last hour, and I'm really excited to take those learnings with me back to my work. And I was wondering, so we at Thompson Island play a ton of games with our students. Like that's like our bread and butter. We do the climbing thing, and we do the a little bit of science ed, but like the big thing that we do like most of the time all day is play different games. And many of those games have like some kind of verbal component or at minimum some sort of like here are the rules and you need to understand them to be able to like participate kind of thing. And I was just curious, I mean, obviously this is a vast question because there's like literally billions of autistic people and they all present very differently. Um, but I was just curious in your practice, like what are some like kind of tried and true games that work well? Really with like any kind of person I'd be curious about, but I guess like specifically like nonverbal students or students who like use the AACs or yeah, I don't know. Just what kind of games do you like?
Oh, good question. So as a speech therapist, I only see people individually, but I was a camp counselor for a while, working with individuals with disabilities. And I think basically any game, as long as you can adapt it to be inclusive, that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but we played a lot of activities where like maybe for example like Simon Says, we just made sure we had like the AAC device available, or if it's an individual who doesn't have the AAC device, or be like, okay, like what does Simon say, and they would like point to their nose or their eye to kind of like participate. So accepting anyone's preferred mode of communication and making sure it's a game where everyone can participate. So if it's like a game like Would You Rather, for example, that might be hard for a non-speaking person to play because it requires like a more lengthy response. So I would say like any activity where you can kind of adapt it to a first choice or to a point or yeah. But that's not a great answer to your question. It is quite broad. So I apologize that I can't think of like, oh, here are my tried and true games for but yeah, if you want to tell me a little bit more about kind of the types of activities you already have, or like kind of the setting you're in, I'd love to chat more.
Yeah, maybe I'll think on that and get a
Yeah,
little more specific and open the floor for anyone else.
sounds good. Thank you. Hi, Susan.
Susan.
One thing that I have noticed sometimes on programs with volunteering with Waypoint is if someone is someone's with autism, and part of that it shows itself by like walking around a lot at first, like being really active physically, then that's sort of the introduction to the program. And I sometimes wonder, is there anything I can do to kind of help with kind of introducing them to the program, if their kind of intro is a lot of like physical activity and moving around and kind of, sometimes it seems like, as someone who is new to this, it seems like they're a little bit in their own world, kind of processing things. Are there ways to communicate with them in that situation, or is it best just to give them time, or just your thoughts on that?
Oh, good question. Yeah. I think time is really helpful. Like I think a lot of times, it could be a variety of things. Like it could just be the person is sort of like processing, like the pacing could be perceived as like a stim, or kind of like, this is what I do to regulate myself when I'm feeling like anxious or in a new environment. I also have people who are just always on the go. Like it's not that they're anxious or excited, they're just always moving around. And I have to learn ways to kind of communicate, like just jog alongside them and tell them what we need to let them know. But yeah, I think kind of pausing and waiting, like it seems like in the situation you're describing, it sounds like maybe that's sort of like this acclimation period. So I think, yeah, like I think giving them that time to kind of pace and move, and you can kind of just be adjacent and say like, I'm so excited you're here. Like, I'm wondering when you're ready to learn about what we're going to do today, but kind of giving them that time to acclimate. There's also, you can always preview ahead of time. I'm not sure if Waypoint uses like social stories where you can kind of, yeah, exactly. So like sending ahead of time, like this is what we're going to do. And so maybe during that time, you have the social story that you like sent to the family with you. And you're like, I'm going to remind myself what we're doing today. Like, let's look through like, oh, we're going to do this and this and this. And maybe the person's listening, maybe they're not, but it's kind of just giving them the space to take what they need to like acclimate to the environment. I found helpful. Yeah.
That's great. And I also think that's such a great concept that you've shared, which is that, pausing is a form of communication, or giving space is a form of communication as well. So.
Totally. Yeah. Because I think the biggest thing, which I hope shines through, is a lot of times like individuals with disabilities in general, and a lot of times particularly autistic people, experience a lot of their world in like agency reducing situations where it's basically like kind of you have to do this and this and this. And so if they enter into a Waypoint space and they see that the person is giving them time and space to initiate, and you're waiting for them to kind of like come to you or show interest in an activity, like you're kind of returning that like agency to them. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead, Dan.
Hello, thanks, Megan. This has been very fun. I've had multiple of my kids bopping in and out of this conversation, asking questions, and
great.
you've answered all of them. They keep looking at me and they're like, "Oh, there's the answer." So this has been very fun for our family. On a couple of maybe many of our programs, taking breaks is a little tricky. So in a tandem kayak, usually as the person in the back of the boat, I can't see somebody's face in front of me. When we ride tandem bikes, I'm facing forward and they're behind me. And so when I'm with somebody who doesn't communicate verbally, sometimes knowing when to take a break is tricky. And I was trying to think of other creative ways of allowing folks to signal, I want to take a break. I didn't know if you had if you thought of those two environments where you're not facing somebody and you're moving and you might be with a group, so you don't necessarily just want to stop, of any creative ways, or is it just the recommendation that, hey, every once in a while you just need to take a break and turn around and look at each other?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think yes, I think sometimes those like sort of universal support. So maybe you build in a tandem ride or in a tandem kayak, every 15 minutes we stop and we chat or whatever. So it's kind of those built-in like universal supports, like everyone gets the opportunity to take a break if they're not necessarily going to initiate asking for that. Yeah, so in a tandem kayak, the situation is you're in the back and the participant is in the front. Maybe what could be helpful is kind of like some form of augmentative communication where it's something where the person can reach ahead of them. So I'm trying to figure out, this would take a little bit of an engineering brain, but maybe you have like a laminated piece of paper that like has like a some sort of like indicator of like, I have something to say, or wait, or like, I need to talk. And they can kind of like reach towards it to let you know. And I think also not everyone is going to use AAC that's provided. I think that's an important thing to say too. Like some people are really familiar with picture symbols. Not everyone who comes to Waypoint may necessarily have been exposed to it. So this isn't like a cure-all, it will definitely work every time. But for someone who does communicate that way, maybe having some sort of symbol that's in the kayak that like the person can like reach toward to let you know might be helpful. And then communicating with the family ahead of time, like maybe they've figured out things that are successful, like they notice there's a particular stim that they do when they're anxious, or when you hear them vocalize in this way, that means they kind of want to communicate something. So yeah, hopefully that helps. On the bike too, like maybe you have something on the handle that they can like pull. So in the tandem bike, they're in the front and you're in the back.
Usually it's the
reverse.
other way around. I thought it was like take a break on one shoulder and keep going on the other. And if I
Yeah,
remember which shoulder is which,
totally.
I could ask, make a choice. And if it's tap on this shoulder, we take a break. If it's tap on this shoulder, we keep going. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that, or
Great.
even like bells or something like that.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people who use AAC also find the way that AAC sounds to be really fun. So I could see someone who's like, this bell is the best, and just ring it the whole time. So that may be, so it kind of depends on the person regarding like whether or not these strategies would be successful. But yeah, I'd say having some thing that either makes a noise or the person can reach to communicate. But yeah, the best thing is asking the family what has been successful in the past, because that's probably the best thing to carry over in the future. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan.
Of course. Thanks.
Stephen, I see your hand, but can I jump the line? Because I have a question that I feel like kind of relates to what Dan was just asking.
Sure.
And around AAC and picture symbols and communication, sometimes I'm just not sure if, right, there's many different like programs and softwares that folks might be used to, or that they use on their device, and it can kind of vary from thing to thing. And then especially the less sort of concrete picture symbol like emotions and the more abstract kind of concepts. I guess, do you have any thoughts on that, of like how to make those, the most universal as possible? Is it just one of those things?
Yeah, good question. The best rule of thumb is to use what the person is familiar with, which inherently makes it not a universal support. It makes it very personalized. So like if someone comes to you and they use all the high-tech devices kind of have software names. So there's like Touch Chat or Lamp Words for Life or Go Talk, and like these things that you've probably heard. And so if that's what the person is using, sticking with that, like the thing that they bring in, and kind of asking the family, like if you use Touch Chat, can you like bring a screenshot of the homepage that we can laminate and bring with us in the kayak? Like that would be the most successful support for that person, because that's like the symbols and the setup that they're familiar with. And maybe even if they do comprehend these other symbols, in a moment where maybe they are feeling distressed or frustrated, they then have to find the symbol, which like if you've ever tried to like order Grubhub on a friend's phone, you're like, where is it? Like it's frustrating. And so so being able to have the support that they usually use, if it's an individual who you just don't know ahead of time. Maybe they do have a system, but you just don't know before they come, which probably happens a lot, I'm assuming. So you might not know what system they're using. Maybe they don't have a consistent system, or maybe they've like literally never been exposed to AAC in their life, is probably situations that happen a lot. And so my rule of thumb is like, make it as concrete as possible. So maybe the way the person asks for help is you have a picture of the actual like volunteer that they're with, so they can indicate like, hey, I want to ask this person a question. Or like maybe the way they indicate whether they want the rock wall or a break is you have a picture of the spot where they go to take a break and a picture of the rock wall, rather than like an image of a rock wall and an image of like, I think a lot of the images of break is like a kid like leaning back in his, like a stick figure leaning back in his chair with his legs crossed, and like that kind of looks more like it's like margarita time to me versus like I want to break from the rock wall. So yeah, I feel like having more concrete like actual pictures of places that are choices is often helpful. But beyond that, I don't have a recommendation for like, oh, should you use like board maker symbols or these symbols? Like they're all pretty equally abstract. And so if someone's been exposed to them and is familiar with them, they'll be successful. If they're not, they might not be successful. So I'd say using like real pictures is often the best choice. With the caveat too, that it's something that grows. So just as someone's language grows, like someone's ability to use a communication system also grows as they like are exposed to it more time. So maybe it's not successful the first time you see a kid, and maybe it's a different volunteer the next time, but they're successful the next time they use it. So yeah.
Huge points. I'm like jotting all this stuff down.
Awesome.
Steve, sorry, go ahead.
No worries, Carly. You actually took one of my questions, but I just wanted to add, just while we're on this topic, it seems like Boardmaker, in terms of like at least our school-based programming, seems to be kind of like the main visual form of communication. Do you have like an answer as to why that is versus other ones? Because it seems like when in doubt, use Boardmaker.
Yeah, I think Boardmaker has a really good marketing team. So I think that's it. Like I don't think it's like, oh, research has been done to show that Boardmaker is the most, yeah.
That's what that's what I thought, but I was just curious if there was like data that backed why Boardmaker was like the cream of the crop.
Yeah. So basically augmentative communication, like anything, is a business. And so it's like there are things that work better for some people. So the way a system is organized, how like concrete a symbol is, like, can I tell just from looking at the picture what it is? But beyond that, whether you use Boardmaker symbols or Pictello symbols, there's not really a difference.
Okay.
But because Boardmaker is so widely used, it's more likely that they would have seen that before in their schools. So it might be a good guess if you're not sure which symbols to use. Yeah.
Great. Your presentation was so great, very thorough. I have a lot of questions. I have 3 more questions.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me, they should be pretty easy to answer, hopefully. Do you have any resources on like the experience from the perspective of somebody with autism, or the perspective of a speech pathologist, that you would recommend kind of checking out? Some things that came to mind for me are like the book The Reason I Jump, some books from Tom Grandin, anything that you think is worth recommending?
Yes, I do. And why don't you ask your next question while I pull up some slides?
Great.
Because I can share them.
Awesome. So in your experience, working with folks on the autism spectrum and working with parents, is there anything that wasn't in your presentation that you're hearing from parents and folks that they wished folks who work with them in the future would understand or apply?
That is a great question. I feel like one of the biggest things that I think is misunderstood about autism that people have shared with me, and like families too, is empathy. A lot of times people assume that autistic people lack empathy, or they often talk about like theory of mind, like, oh, neurotypical people have theory of mind and autistic people don't. And like new research is showing, and also just like perspectives of people is like, that's not true. Like we empathize, we have emotions, we feel our feelings. And a lot of times like, I think what happens is people have interoceptive differences. So maybe they're not as attuned to like, oh, my heart's racing. That means I'm feeling anxious. Or
Hmm.
maybe when they're feeling anxious, they have a more flat affect, like they go into this more like maybe freeze state, whereas someone else who's feeling anxious, they might be telling you I'm feeling anxious and they're showing it on their face. And so a lot for years and years and years, people presumed, oh, that means these people like aren't empathetic, they're not able to read their emotions, they're not showing their emotions, they're not feeling these feelings. And that's just not true. It's just a different way of interpreting and expressing. But these people are very much kind of like empathetic people who feel the full range of human emotion, even if they might show it in a different way. So anxiety may look like flat affect, and happy may look like jumping up and down and stimming, and curious may look like deep in thought, but not necessarily like engaging and asking questions. And I think the other thing is interest in relationships. And so autistic people, just like all people, want to be understood and connect and have friendships and have relationships. All people have differences in terms of whether they're the type of person who wants to have kind of like one best friend, or if they want to have a big group of people in their life, and autistic people are the same. And so sometimes relationships can look like, wanting to engage in parallel or enjoying being around people, but needing more time to recharge. So I think those are the two biggest like misconceptions about autism. And I think when people understand those better, it kind of just like humanizes and I guess like normalizes some of the things that we see with these people. So yeah, did that answer your question? Was that kind
Yes,
of
it
on
did.
target? Okay,
No, that was
awesome.
great. Thank you so much. I have one more question.
Sure.
And this is more of like a general question, but is there anything that like the autism community right now that is like actively fighting for or like looking to change um with like language or rights or access or anything that we can kind of get behind and assist in any way that you're seeing?
I love these questions. These are fantastic. Yeah. So one of the biggest pushes is for garnering our sort of like time and financial and cognitive support behind organizations that are kind of like for and by autistic people rather than by non-autistic people for a cure. And so, for example, like the Autism Self-Advocacy Network is an organization that is kind of more highly praised in the autistic community, as like the funding and the research goes towards community supports and advocacy and acceptance, whereas Autism Speaks, for example, is an organization that is a little bit more rooted in like, let's find a cure and let's put our money behind like these more behavioral interventions. And if anyone here is an Autism Speaks supporter, like I do believe that they are still doing, like well-intentioned work, but that's maybe just kind of something that from the autism community has come out as like, maybe look at like who's on the board and what the mission is, and whether or not it's aligned with neurodiversity affirming values. And similarly, I do think a big push in advocacy is for improving funding for therapies that get to the basis of a behavior rather than looking at kind of the behavior itself. So for example, like kind of communication therapy that's a little bit more like affirming to cultural differences with autistic people, like occupational therapy to support like sensory processing and interoception, and then kind of like lifelong accommodations and supports being given more funding and support and research over, for example, a lot of people in the autistic community are pretty against applied behavior analysis, for example, ABA. And I know probably a lot of people here, maybe you are an ABA, maybe you work with ABAs. And it's not to say like down with the whole profession, but more so just say, let's take a look at like whether or not these particular like therapies are looking at developing skills or more so promoting like kind of behaviors or masking of kind of authentic autistic traits. So I think for those who work with ABAs and are in the ABA field, I think you do wonderful work, and you make a big difference in the lives of so many people. And I think what the autistic community asks is kind of like just, yeah, like sort of that like mutual understanding, like seeking to understand like where these behaviors come from, like maybe not like suppressing stimming or requesting eye contact, but understanding like, why do we stim? Why don't we make eye contact? And kind of building from this place of mutual understanding. So yeah, I'd say those are the big ones.
Great, thank you. That was awesome. I really appreciate you answering my questions.
Of course, yeah. And then I'll show you, let me share my screen again. I can send this to Carly at the end. This has been updated like maybe a year ago, so there's probably a lot more, but oh gosh, why for the life of me? View slideshow. There you go. Okay, awesome. So here are some resources that are for and by autistic people and people who support autistic people. So a ton of Instagrams. So you don't have to write this down. I'll just send them to Carly. So Instagram, Facebook, blogs, books, movies and TV shows. Loop is actually particular. If you haven't seen Loop, Loop is about a camp counselor who goes on a tandem kayak ride with an autistic girl who's non-speaking and learns how to connect with her. It's so sweet. It's
Wow, that sounds like right up her alley.
Yeah, exactly.
Goodness graciousness, you couldn't queue up something better.
It's so sweet. It's a really good, I watch it with my kids a lot and they like really connect with it. It's, you know, it's fiction, but it's sweet. I really like it. Documentaries, trainings, this is kind of a statement about like the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, further reading and resources. Yeah. Okay. So that's from like a presentation that I give to like clinicians. So I'll send you all those resources.
That's awesome. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not, obviously it's not even close to comprehensive, but like a good start. And I feel like when you follow one person, then you get the ads for the other people and yeah.
Great. Any other questions from our audience?
I do have a question.
I'm back.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, Nat. You want to go first? You go first.
Sure, yeah. This has been really great. Thank you so much. I also work at Thompson Island with Karen, and we work with student groups that can be like up to 12 students in a group. And sometimes we're giving pretty lengthy instructions, and the group is moving at different paces of understanding and processing and physically moving around. And so I'm wondering if you have any recommendations or ways that you can present a lot of information to a lot of different people with different needs and still make it accessible to all those people.
Yeah, that's a great question. Could you give like, maybe I'll try to like, could you give an example of like the type of activity you might be giving directions for? So I could try to like think it through a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so we climb an alpine tower and we go through the process of teaching them how to put on their harnesses and their helmets and then showing them how to belay and giving them all the rules for this tower. So it's quite a lot of information.
Yeah, right. Okay, that is a lot. Yeah, I'd think, and so the situation that's happening is some people are like, okay, come on, let's move it along. And other people are like, wait, go back to the first step. Yeah, exactly. So I guess a couple of things, like what you could do is kind of like if you have multiple facilitators, it could be like, you know, the people who, you know, and if you're finished early, you can kind of move on and do this activity before we get started or whatever. So it could be presenting information to, you know, the people who pick it up quickly, and then kind of returning and giving extra support. But, you know, if you have the means for kind of sort of like directions that are universally understood, I would say what can be really helpful is like if you have like kind of like blown up visuals, like whether, I don't know, like what kind of space are you in? Like, would you have like a screen or a whiteboard behind you, or would it be easier to like hold up a piece of paper?
Yeah, we're outside.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured.
So definitely like a piece of paper would be more accessible.
Totally, yeah. So if you have like a piece of paper or a poster that like goes through each step and then like maybe making it interactive. So maybe like it's the type of thing where like everyone like has like a marker or whatever, you have the marker and it's kind of like, okay, like check off like when you've done each step kind of thing. And so like people can take it at their own pace, but you can kind of like check in with people. So maybe you're giving one thing at a time, like, okay, like first step, like put your harness on, and then you're going around and helping people and they can check off when they're done, like, awesome, great. Like next step is do this. Does that seem like something that like might work for that scenario?
Yeah, I definitely think we could implement that in like the beginning section, at least for harnesses and helmets. I think that could work.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest thing is that there's no like, I guess like easy quick fix that like kind of like is like how you can give one direction that works for everybody. But I guess kind of defaulting to the supports that the person who has the most support needs will benefit from. Yeah, is probably how I would say. So maybe just taking it slower, going one step at a time, and kind of, you know, encouraging meditation in the great outdoors for the people who finish quickly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Makes a lot of sense.
Hi again.
That's mine now. Hi. So I'm back with a different thing instead of doing what I said.
Okay, awesome.
I uh, I have found in my mild experience working with autistic folks, especially those who I learned a lot of new words tonight, who communicate back up to like with Gestalt
Yeah, yeah.
language processing.
Mhm.
And also with students who have like who use like iPads, who
Yeah.
are like maybe at times at least nonverbal. And one thing that we need to do a lot on the island that is like pretty important, like at a pretty important like moment of communication is when we get somewhere and we're like establishing safety boundaries. So for example, when we go to the beach, it's important that students not like pick up any glass or anything they find that might look sharp. It's important that they, you know, that if they're like it's really important that they keep their shoes on.
Mhm.
It's important that like if they go in the water, they understand that like we can't make them dry anymore and they will have to continue to be wet because they chose to go in the water, things like that. And yeah, things like don't throw like a rock that's too big, don't throw rocks at people. Like there's a lot of don'ts, there's a lot of no's, and I know that
Yeah.
you know, it when you can, it's good to reverse those and be like, leave the rocks on the ground instead of like, don't throw the rocks.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. I've had experiences sometimes where like we arrive and like I've got a lot of things I need to like say, and you know, students maybe will just like kind of walk over there and like I'll like try to communicate and it's like not working very well and things like that. So I'm just wondering like clearly I'm not doing it great. Like what would be like the ideal, like we're going to the beach later and like there will be safety rules. Like how can I like best like prepare for like all of that so that like we are on a better path toward success?
Yeah, good
Like what can I do
question.
earlier that like
Yeah. How do you get to that space? Like, are you walking together? Are you like in a car, like on a bus to get to that space?
we walk?
Okay, awesome. And then do you like meet up like so like from start to finish of this activity? Is it like you meet up in a space, you go for the walk, and then you end up in that space?
Yeah, so like our groups will like arrive on the island and we usually like gather all together and then we'll split into our crews and each crew, like Natalie said, has about 12. And then the 12 people will like walk around or move around however they're moving the island and like visit like a section of beach. And we usually like hang
Yeah.
out on the beach for all it's not total free time, but we're like we spend some time and we're supervising, making sure no one gets hurt. And then eventually we will like gather back together and move on somewhere else.
Yeah, okay. I think what could be helpful is as you're like this may sound really silly, but I think it could be fun as you're walking if you have like images and like almost create like a fun camp chant that kind of goes along, like that might make it a little bit easier to remember, and it requires like a call and response. So maybe you're walking with the group and like you have a picture of like sand with rocks in it, and then you have a picture of like sand with glass in it, and then you have a picture of like someone swimming in the water, and you like hold up the one picture and you're like, first rule is rocks on the ground, and like they like people who can like might chant it back, or maybe you're just saying it and it's like next rule is, and like whatever, and maybe you go through it a few times, and so it's kind of like familiarizing people with it in kind of a fun way that like I feel like camp counselors like do a lot. Like I feel like we did a lot of that, like kind of like chants or songs or like silly things to like get everyone on the same page in a way that's appropriate for kind of the age group and ability level of the people you're working with. But I think that could be kind of a fun way to do it. So you kind of have the picture, so there's like the visual cue, but then it's also like particularly for like Gestalt language processors that like turning it into a song or a chant might make it a little bit easier to process and retain. Well, for all people, like chants and songs are easier to process and retain. And so that might take a little creativity, but if you can make it rhyme and you can turn it into something where like the person's like hearing and processing over and over again before they get to this thing and it's all new and there's a million things and rules to remember, then even having that call and response, you could like be able to like, as you're on the beach, like if you see someone about to engage in an unsafe behavior, you might be able to say like, the next rule was, and then they're like, oh, right, like shoes stay on or like whatever. So I don't know. Does that seem like something that could potentially work with the groups that you run?
That sounds like that could be a lot of fun to create. That sounds like a great like project for a day when one of us is not on course. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. And I guess like everything that I'm sharing today is with the knowledge that everyone's time is limited and everyone has so many wonderful things that they're doing and working on. So these might not be solutions that work all of the time, but are kind of just things to think about in your free time. Yeah. Awesome. I see your hand, Tara. Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm also from the island. And my question was about when we're doing some of our activities, for example, like the low ropes where there's like a teeter, like a big teeter totter, the whale watch, or some sort of balance element, or just games and stuff. When there's people who have some neurodiversity, sometimes we'll let them like watch for a while to figure out what's going on before we like really ask them to join. And my question was, when it's difficult to read people's body language, and we also don't want to like force them by prompting them. Do you have any suggestions um, for like figuring out like how much encouragement the person might need in order to engage in the activity? It seemed like the I wonder statements, so it's like I wonder if you're ready to join us could work.
Yeah.
But I guess like when it comes to like people are having it's you're having trouble reading whether or not someone is like ready or needs more support and things like that, what strategies you would suggest using?
Yeah, definitely. Some people, particularly autistic people, also have like challenges with praxis, which like is basically like motor planning. So maybe this person is interested in engaging in this activity, but they're like, wait, how do I do that? Like how do I motorically get my body on this thing or move in this way? And so I think, yeah, like giving time, using I wonder statements like, oh, I wonder if you'd like to give it a try. It looks really cool. And then you can model the activity when appropriate. So like, I think I'm having a hard time visualizing what this is, but I'm going to use the example of the seesaw. So say the thing is a seesaw and you can say like, oh, I wonder if you want to give it a try. I'm going to give it a try. Okay, first I'm going to put my hands on the handle, then I'll put my feet here and then I'll sit down. Wow, this is really cool. And then you can kind of turn around and be like, I wonder if you want to try. And maybe they do and maybe they don't, but at least then you've kind of like, you've invited them, you've shown them how to do it. And then maybe they'll try it today. Maybe they'll try it next year after they've given themselves time to like process and see whether or not. But yeah, I think when it's something that someone has to do versus something that someone is invited to do and it's a leisure activity, you can kind of vary the level of support. Yeah, because I'm sure there's situations on the island where it's kind of like, we just gotta get from point A to point B for safety reasons, keep the group together. And so, yeah, then your language might change and be like, it's time to do this. Let's go, come on, kind of thing, in like a friendly kind of way. But in those situations, just offering and providing invitations and modeling how you would engage in the activity.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
That helps.
of course.
Great. Are there any last minute questions that people are dying to ask? Great. I just wanted to make a quick point. I think that as Waypoint staff on sort of we get to see a little bit more of that after effect with some of our participants. And so coming into a program and engaging with someone who maybe has limited communication, we don't always know if they like loved the activity or, we don't have that benefit of communicating with them in the same way. necessarily all of the time. And I just want to like reemphasize that we get follow-ups all the time. I had a teacher reach out yesterday who had a student out on a hike and went home and like talked to dad and said, I hiked, I went to the top. And that's like not language or communication that we were getting from him in the moment, because we're kind of new to him and maybe he doesn't know us. And so when he goes home and he's around familiar people, then sometimes that language comes out. So just want to reiterate, like, we don't always get to see it happen in that moment, but all of the support that you all give to our participants is so meaningful and beneficial. So thank you all. I will plan to follow up with everyone and send slides if that is okay. And as well as Megan's recommendations. So again, thank you so much, Megan. We threw like the world's hardest questions
Oh,
at
no,
you.
not at all.
So yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And Carly has my contact information. Feel free. Like, I was telling her, like, I love that I get to talk about this stuff and this is part of my job. And so please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm happy to share if I didn't answer your question specifically and you'd love to talk more, I'd love to help.
Great. Thanks everyone. Come out on a Waypoint program soon.
Thanks, Megan. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. And I'll send those resources over to Carly as well. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Is the question
Thank you
Matt.
so much.